impossible for it to happen the way modern football is now, with, you know, the groupage of players and the whole kind of distance that they draw players from. You're never going to see that again, you know, within a 30-mile radius, that whole team. It's just, and what they achieved just to conquer European football, and not just that, but the style they done it in, with pure attacking football, just no giving up, and no gain respect, but no too much respect, because they had true belief in themselves, and that's what Jock Stein gave them. True belief in it went through the whole team, and they even speak about it to this day. Anytime you see a line getting interviewed, they talk about the belief that they can go and do it. You know, they weren't in any fear. And a prime example is Bertie Auld coming out singing a Celtic song, you know, and then me, Jimmy, pointing and going, are you marking me? No bother, mate, no bother. You know, and these are big film stars walking out and going, who are these guys? You're going to find out who these guys are. And there's Big Billy uplifting the cup, you know. Absolute heroes. We should never, they're never going to be forgotten anyway. But, you know, when you think of John Clark and the service that he gave Celtic, he basically gave his whole life to the club when you think about it. You know, probably one of the most unassuming out of the lines, and they were all very, very humble men. But he was one of the kind of quieter ones, I would say. You know, you had the personality of Bertie Auld and wee Jimmy and all that, and, you know, the kind of stature of Billy McNeil and all the other guys, but he always seemed to be a wee bit kind of quieter one. But look at the service he gave to Celtic, and the way anything you heard them speaking, getting interviewed, talking about Celtic, you could feel the love coming out, the words out his mouth, you know, for the club. And it's just a really sad time, you know, and unfortunately, it's something we've all got to face as we get older. But it's still really sad to see, you know, because you can see it coming to an end. They're never going to die. They will die in the physical body, but in spirit, these guys are immortal, and they are going to be immortal in our hearts, in our history. They'll always be there. Just really sad, but glad that what they've went and done, you know, is just put us in the history books forever.
Yeah, Kaiser, you know, Andy took the words out of my mouth. It's the very word I was going to use. They are immortal, and they always will be. They might die, but they'll be immortal forever. You know, the area that you live in, that's where all the Lisbon Lions were from. You know, all born within 5 miles of the stadium. You put some cracking stuff in the group chat that I'd love you to express now, mate. You know, nicknames for them and all different things. Mm-hmm. Just very, very sad, mate. Very, very sad.
Yeah, John Clark, of course, mate, affectionately known as Luggy or the Brush, because his sweeper role at Glasgow Celtic, a quadruple hero, legends, a quadruple hero. In the 1966-1967 season, Clark and Tommy Gemmell were the only two players who played all 59 matches in that unprecedented quadruple run. The European Cup, Scottish League, Scottish Cup and the League Cup. Utterly devoted his life to Celtic, and his defensive style and solidarity as a sweeper was pivotal in his defeating Inter Milan in that final. Anyone who's never watched that game, go back and watch it. My father and grandfather made me go back and watch it, as the famous saying goes at Glasgow Celtic, if you know the history. Humble beginnings for the man as well. Born in Chapel Hall, North Lanarkshire. He became the man of the house at 10 years old. His father died in a rail accident. At only 10 years old, he became the main provider for his household. Just to think of someone in this modern day and age of such self-entitlement and kids getting away with murder, it really hits home what kind of individuals we're losing. Absolute legend. And Andy's spot on, right? Look, you physically, your body can pass away, right? You leave this mortal coil, but legends never die. They live on in the hearts and minds of Celtic fans forever. And these Lisbon Lions will live on forever. If only any of us could be so lucky to go down in infamy or history and be remembered for the rest of our lives. A Scottish Hall of Famer. His contributions were recognised. I think he got 4 caps in the 66-67 season for Scotland as well. One of Scotland's finest ever defenders. Expressed that the sweeper role was a role I would love to see coming back to the modern game as well. It's no utilised nowadays. Very much a dying art, but very humanising. And Andy, you're not wrong, right? Look, I'm 43 years old. I was nowhere near the age group to watch the Lisbon Lions. Some of the legends for the 1980s that you speak about, I barely remember them as a young man, but like it really struck a chord, really heartfelt, struck a chord with me as well. I found myself like crying and stuff about this, and I don't care who makes fun. Like, real men shed tears as well. I think about John's passing shows us his humility and humbleness goes a long way. Being a family man also counts just as much as and being a legend to thousands upon thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of Celtic fans around the world would have joined us, I'm sure, in quiet reverence, respect, and saying a prayer for the family. I know everyone in this chat out there, they'll be true Celtic people as well. Every last one of them will be like saying a prayer and giving their heartfelt wishes towards the family and hoping to help them through this hard time. I wish there was more I could say. I wish I knew more. I wish I could delve deeper into his entire life. But I think the players in that who knew him best, Henrik Larsson always went for a cup of tea with him whenever he came to Glasgow as well. I knew players like Chris Sutton, John Hartson. When you hear players, modern day heroes and legends to us, speak of them in such reverence, you know exactly what he brought to Celtic. Okay, he was a Lisbon Lion, but he gave more than that. He was assistant manager, he was kit man, he just done it all. He just epitomised Celtic and what it is to be Celtic. And not once did he throw his dummy out the pram. I remember someone saying he refused to write an autobiography because he didn't want to offend anyone. Yeah. I mean, have you ever heard of such humility in your life? Well, I have now, but I had never heard anything like that before. Very poignant. A massive, massive, massive loss. It does strike a chord with me and makes me think about the remaining Lions and why have we got Hoopy the Huddle Hound and not Lisbon the Lion as a mascot? I don't know. Sorry, Hoopy, but I can see me getting rid of you and getting Lisbon in there, the Lion. I'll try and leave Paddy something to say as well. Paddy's always got fantastic takes. It's terrible being the last guy in it, Paddy. Everybody says everything amazing before you, and you're just sitting there like, aye, well.
No, brilliant, mate. Thanks very much for that. And Paddy, something that strikes a chord with me as well is, you know, he did give 60 years of his life to Celtic and ended up being the kit man. Can you imagine the day a Champions League winner, you know, picking up the dirty players' kit after games and things like that? You know, that's just how humble this guy really was. Incredible human being, and they all were. That's the thing as well about the Lions. They were all just normal guys like me and you. There was no big shots in there at all. Yeah. You know, they just were normal guys. You know, I'm for Saltcoats, as most people know. We just see Bobby Lennox just, you know, no strutting about the town, just walking about the town. All right, son, how's it going? And just normal guys. And John Clark was certainly one of them. Just devastating news, mate.
It is, and that's the thing, Scott. You know, these are the guys that we all wanted to be whenever we were younger. And I'm not even necessarily talking about a player. I'm talking about being a Celtic man. We all knew these guys whenever we were younger. Guys, you know, who were supporters but they were real Celtic men, and we all knew people like that. We all knew the real Celtic men, and that's what we wanted to be. I want to be one of them. I just don't want to be a Celtic fan. I want to be a real Celtic man. I want to be known as a Celtic man. You know, and John Clark just was the epitome of being a Celtic man. You know, he played in that team with Jock Stein, you know, and as we said earlier, you know, Andy said a very true thing about them. You know, the legends will live on. I still say that team of 1967, Jock Stein and the Lisbon Lions, their achievement that night they lit an eternal flame that will never go out. Absolutely never go out. There's an eternal flame there that will burn. Yeah, they may leave this earth, but they will never ever be forgotten in the memories of people connected with Celtic. Whether you be a player, a fan, you know, a member of staff, whatever. These guys will never ever be forgotten. You know, they didn't only change the history of Celtic, Scott. We changed the entire fabric of European football that night in Lisbon. We absolutely smashed through the glass ceiling that was an evidence that you couldn't beat the Italians and you couldn't beat the Spanish because of the way they played. That was they were dominating at that time. And Jock Stein, in his vision and with the players that he had, he moulded that team into a team that absolutely just shattered that illusion that night. And in truth, a lot of those big teams from those nations never really recovered. It took 20 years for someone to recover. You know, we paved the way for Manchester United in 1968.
Yeah.
You know, that also paved the way for the Liverpool team of the 70s and 80s. You know what I mean? So Celtic Football Club created the mould that night, and all the English teams did was follow. As simple as that. You know, whether you've won it once or whether you've won it 20 times, it's neither here nor there. We were the first team to win it from these shores, and everybody else followed behind us and have been following behind us ever since. So I have absolutely no doubt that these guys will go down. They will go down in the history of Celtic Football Club. Tommy Burns said on the pitch at Hampden in 1988, that's the thing that appealed to him most of all, was when they write the history of this club again in 100 years from now, I'll be in the team that done the double in the centenary year. And that's exactly what John Clark will be the same. It won't matter whether they write the history every single 100 years from now. John Clark's name will be indelibly linked to that team that became the first team to win the European Cup. You know, and just such an accomplished player. You know, somebody said it there earlier, like if we had a player like that at the minute to play alongside Cameron Carter-Vickers, that's exactly what we could do at the minute. He was a perfect foil for Big Billy McNeil. Big Billy was the one that challenged the centre forward and knocked him about and went for the aerial duels. John Clark just swept up behind all across the back four. He actually only scored one goal in his whole Celtic career, and that was on his debut. He made his debut in 1961 in a cup tie replay against Hibs, and he scored on his debut, and he never scored again. So that's just a wee quirky fact. He was also assistant manager at Celtic, and he was also assistant manager at Aberdeen. He then held jobs in his own right at Cowdenbeath, Stranraer, and at Clyde as well. He had a soft spot for Clyde as well. He always had a soft spot for Clyde Football Club, given that they were literally around the corner from Celtic and stuff like that, you know. So, again, he came in that area. We've talked about it before, and I don't want to put a dampener on it, but, you know, he came in an era where those Celtic players that were involved in that team in that era, you can more or less say that team from 65 right through to 75, they only got a handful of Scotland caps between the whole lot of them. John Clark got 5 or 6 Scotland caps, and I'll say it before and I'll say it again. Kenny McLean has 50 Scotland caps. You know, just let that sink in, guys. Do you know what I mean? So, listen, he was an absolute legend. You know, I was very fortunate, as I say, to meet the wee man a couple of times, and, you know, a more grounded, nicer individual you just couldn't have come across. As say, when you spoke to John Clark for a couple of minutes, you just thought, it felt as though you had a conversation with your grandfather. That's what it was like. He was just such a warm, welcoming individual. He had time for everybody. You know, there was no panic with him. There was no getting away, rushing for the door. He was quite happy to sit there and chat to Celtic people all night long and talk about his experiences, sign autographs, pose for photographs. He was just such a lovely, warm individual. And I know his family were very, very close. And as I say, our thoughts and prayers are with him. But for me, as I say, John Clark goes down absolutely, along with the other Lions, as an absolute legend of Celtic Football Club. And as Kaiser says, I think the club should be doing something to recognise these guys, because they're disappearing over the hill very, very quickly. You know, there's only 3 of them left now, you know, and they're all bound to be in sort of various stages of ill health themselves, you know. So we need to protect these guys that are still there. But that team that we're looking at there now, that team, as Andy says, they're immortal. I said that to you. We lit a flame that night, and that flame is eternal, and that flame will never, ever go out. Those names that will just roll off your tongue. I'm a 60-year-old now. Those names just roll off your tongue the same as the first time you learned them. And that's the same no matter where you go in the world. You ask any Celtic fan that knows his history to give you the Lisbon team, they'll just, those names just roll off the tongue. So just very, very sad that we're losing another one. But listen, it is what it is. Life, I said earlier, it just shows you the fragility of life, and that's why we should be protecting these guys, and we should be cherishing them, every single one of them, because as I say, once they go, the stories are all gone. You know, you're not going to get those stories. Jim Craig's another one, great man to spend time with, great company with. You know, so Jim and John Clark used to come to our dues together. So Jim will be feeling this very, very hard at the minute as well. You know, so thoughts and prayers to them all. But definitely, you know, as Brendan said himself, the word legend and the word great gets bandied about, but not when it comes to people like John Clark and the Lisbon Lions.
Yeah, 100%, Paddy.
Lads, that was absolutely outstanding, by the way. Absolutely outstanding.
Scotty,
fantastic.
just Just quickly, mate. Just Paddy said that he only scored 1 goal for Celtic. He actually scored 2 because when he went to Morton, he scored an own goal against Celtic. You could have seen 2 for Celtic. So
he meant that. He meant that, but he meant that.
I often use the Lisbon Lions. I've had the privilege of coaching some younger talent, youngsters, involved with my mate who's a SFA coach, and I often cite the Lisbon Lions as the greatest ever sporting achievement ever in the history of sport. For guys so close, so localised to come together and to achieve what they achieved, utterly shattering the mould, as Paddy says, igniting an eternal flame. Often say to people, what's the difference between a Spanish plumber, an Italian plumber, and a Scottish plumber? It's not a cue into a joke. There is absolutely no difference. What's the difference between an Italian bricklayer and a Scottish bricklayer? There's no difference. So what's the difference between an Italian football player, a Spanish football player, or a Scottish football player? There is no difference. There's only the prerequisites in your mind, the labels that you put in yourself and the barriers that you impose on yourself. To say that we will never see the likes of that sporting achievement again is a complete understatement. Now, with me, I hope, I pray, I still pray we'll go on another run, right? I still pray that we'll go on another run and win the big cup again. So I think it's an achievement which it wouldn't pale in comparison, in my opinion. If Celtic managed to win the Champions League in this day and age, it wouldn't carry the same weight for me as the Lisbon Lions doing it, the way they done it, the manner in which they done it, the football they played, the Celtic way. I know my grandfather's a Dunfermline fan, right, and he has a book autographed by the entire Hungarian football team and autographed by Puskas as well. It's called How to Play the Hungarian Way. And I know Jock went to meet Puskas and basically crafted the Celtic way from that dynamic style of play, altered it a bit and made the Celtic way. And that's what it's known. That's how to play the Celtic way. I often refer to it, I often say domestically in Scotland, Celtic should be playing a 2-4-4, just like the Lisbon Lions did. We have no comparison. We have no domestic equals. Our only rival domestically is inconsistency or chucking it too early. That is the only thing that holds us back. We should be absolutely ragdolling every team in Scotland. And more than that, right, I understand we need to be a bit more pragmatic when we get to European football. But delighted with the way we played last year in Europe. I'm not like downplaying how we played last year, but I'm an eternal dreamer. I want us to go on and win it. Like I was going to ask Paddy, would you rather Celtic win the Champions League or Ireland win the World Cup, Paddy? That's a sore one. You need to go on the boat as well.
Ireland can't win a group. Never mind a World Cup.
It's comparative, but it's a comparative challenge. If Ireland or Scotland was to win the World Cup, would you rather that or Celtic to win the Champions League? I would take Celtic to win the Champions League every day.
100%. Right, lads, thank you so much for that wonderful tribute there for John Clark. And yeah, as we alluded to as well, we only have 3 Lions remaining. Jim Craig, Willie Wallace and Bobby Lennox. Very, very sad to see them go. You know, it's devastating, and like I said earlier, it's like we know them all personally. It's such a shame. So Ross Doohan has checked in to Celtic Park this week. One thing that I thought about, lads, is I've never seen our goalkeeping department so strong, by the way. I think we've got 3 really top-class goalkeepers in now. And here's what he had to say. New Celtic signing Ross Doohan has reportedly let slip that the squad will be back at training earlier than expected. In a message to fans on social media, the goalkeeper said, "Absolutely buzzing to be back at Celtic. Can't wait to get started on Friday." Doohan either means the first pre-season game or suggests that the players are set to return on Friday to training, a few days ahead of the reported return date of Monday, June the 30th. The early start would give the squad more time to get ready for the first pre-season match against Queen's Park on July the 4th. Doohan has rejoined Celtic on a 3-year deal. He's expected to be among the first group of players back at Lennoxtown. The 27-year-old came through the club's youth system and returns after time with Tranmere and Aberdeen. Not all players will be back straight away. Some are playing international football. Alistair Johnson and Louis Palmer are away as at the Gold Cup, while Paulo Bernardo has just finished playing in the under-21 Euros. These players will be given more time off before coming back. Others who didn't have international duty or recovering from injury are likely to return first. That includes players who trained through the summer break to stay fit. Celtic have a busy pre-season lined up. After the game against Queen's Park, they'll head to Ireland, Portugal and Italy to face strong opposition. Brendan Rodgers wants the team to be fully ready for the new season, and the return would show the focus is already there. Doohan, his early post may not have been planned, but it gives fans a clear idea that preparations are moving fast behind the scenes. The build-up to the 2025-26 season is now well underway. Andy, I don't know if you've seen the boys' interview, but he speaks very well. He's very excited to be back at Celtic Park, and he did have a few things to say about John Clark as well, who was obviously there when he was a boy at Celtic. As I alluded to as well, mate, I think we've got 3 really solid goalkeepers now, and any 3 of them could have that number 1 jersey next season.
You've got the competition for places, which is very rare in a goalkeeping situation. Obviously, Casper's at the tail end of his career. Sinisalo's been very, very good. You can't really criticise him in any way. I bet you Doohan's very surprised that he's back at Celtic. I've got to be honest with you. It's probably it really came at him quite quick. And I bet you're surprised that he obviously was at us before and had left. But what an opportunity for him. I know it's going to come down to the whole Scottish contingent and go towards that, because Bain's out the door, so technically he's a straight replacement for him, just a younger version. I don't know a lot about him. He's not had very many performances for Aberdeen either to really have a proper look at him. Yes, I managed to get it right. And I haven't even been practicing, so it must be just tattooed inside my head now to get Sinisalo's name right. But I think it's a great opportunity for him, so we'll wait and see what actually happens. In general, the goalkeeper positions don't really change. It's probably the one position in the park that's a constant, unless somebody makes an absolute howler, like somebody does a bar cast or something like that and has donut horns. So, the chances of him actually taking the jersey is a bit too soon to kind of predict anything like that. But he's in the door, he's here, he's part of the squad. So, good luck to him.
Kaiser, he recently started a game for Scotland. He was on holiday with his family actually and got a last-minute call-up. And he done Stevie Clark a good turn by just jumping on a flight the next morning, mate, and appeared. But that's only good news for Celtic as well, if this boy's in and around the Scotland squad. So he's not just coming in as a Scott Bain and picking up a wage. He might actually be in and around the Scotland team as well. And, I think we've got an upgrade on Scott Bain for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think Stevie Woods is a utterly fantastic goalkeeping coach. Really underappreciated or undermentioned resource that Celtic have. And Doohan coming back, he's certainly sending all the signals out that he's not just here to take part, he's here to take over. I love that. I love that enthusiasm. I love that drive. He's clearly going to push Vinny Cini to be better, and Big Casper Schmeichel. He's going to push both of them in training every day, and he's going to want to go for it. I love that. I appreciate that drive and commitment. And of course, when the national team calls, the least you can do, when you're a true Scottish man, the least you can do is drop everything and charge right there. He certainly proved that on the next flight out and right over. An upgrade on Bain, 100%. I seen one Slabbering Cabbage saying in chat there a while ago when we was talking about transfers and stuff, the date coming up, the end of the financial year. I believe that plays a big part in what's happening as well at Celtic to keep us within financial fair play and regulations. Try not to panic too much about signings, legends. I said it earlier on, Big John Hartson will be prescribing CBD toilet roll so as people can calm their ass down. He'll be punting that by the bucket load. So just take a deep breath and wait. It's all doors are open for us. All doors are there. All transfers are boiling back in the background and bubbling away. And no wonder with what's went on at the club this week, with the passing of a legend, that things get put in the back burner. If it had happened, if it had been any other way, there would be instant outcry. There would be public outcry about Celtic going and doing business while a legend has just passed away. So I can see that. And yeah, I'm delighted with our business so far. I'm delighted the young man's come in, and I'm delighted he's going to go for it. He's not just want to be there and smoke a cigar in the jacuzzi hot tub and be a funny man in the dressing room. I'm sure there's Kevin Bridges would fill that role, or we get somebody in there, Big Billy Conley, down in the dressing room, hitting it with a bit of patter and have them all laughing on training every day of the week. So I'm delighted that there's actual competition coming in there. I'm delighted that he's backing himself as well, and he sees himself as competition. He sees these big names in goalkeeping. He's obviously willing to learn. To be there and to learn for a keeper like Kasper Schmeichel is just outstanding. So good luck to him.
Bang on, mate, bang on. And Paddy, Stevie Woods personally phoned him up and asked him if he wanted to come back. So that's a clear recommendation of how good this boy is. And, you know, Stevie Clark found it, you know, in within himself as well to give the boy, a game for Scotland as well. He looks like he's confident. He's only 27. He is going to come in as third choice. There's no doubt about that. You know, Scott Bain's getting a slagging in the comments, but, you know, let's be fair. You know, the boy is an upgrade on him. But, you know, let's all the best to the boy. He looks like we've got a decent signing and very, very good competition now in the goalkeeping places.
Yep. And you know what, Scott? I would still be concerned with the Schmeichel shoulder injury. You know, I was at Hampden for the penalty kicks, and you know the Aberdeen target at that side, and you know I just hope that Schmeichel has made a full recovery from that. You know, but they are obviously just covering themselves, and this young lad has, you know, he's been at Celtic before, but you know sometimes in a player's career, sometimes you have to go to get games and get played, and you know and become a player and develop, you know, and it's just brilliant for him, I'm sure, to get the chance to come back to Celtic. I would say that he probably never expected to get a move back to Celtic again, but from what I can gather, they've been talking to him for quite some time, you know, about coming back, you know. So listen, the fact that he's been called into the Scotland squad bodes well as well, you know. So you know he's going to be working with two top class keepers next year with Schmeichel and Sinisalo. And then when he's away with the Scotland squad, you know he's going to be in along with them as well. So that's all going to be beneficial for us as well. So, but I'm just pleased for the young lad himself, because I'm sure it was a bit of a blow to him having to leave Celtic at the time. But you know sometimes they say you have to do that for the sake of your career, you know. But I'm sure he's just delighted to be back, and I'm just pleased that we've got three top class goalkeepers again, because we will probably need to lean on all three of them at some point next season.
Yeah, bang on. So welcome back to Celtic, Ross Doohan. Celtic TV gets a bit of a slagging off, so it does, ladies and gentlemen, and rightly so. You know, we get a bit of hard time on here sometimes, but listen, they've released their pre-season schedule. So let's have a wee look. They've confirmed their broadcast schedule for the club's pre-season campaign, with all but one match available to fans in the UK and Ireland. Brendan Rodgers' side will kick off their preparations against Queen's Park at the Lesser Hampden on July the 4th, before heading across the water to face Cork City on July the 8th. A behind closed doors encounter with Portuguese side, yep, those boys, follows on July the 12th. The first major test comes in Lisbon against Sporting Lisbon on July the 16th, before the Hoops welcome Eddie Howe's Newcastle United to Glasgow on July the 19th. However, due to broadcast restrictions, this fixture will not be shown on Celtic TV in the UK and Ireland. I'll be all right then, I'll get it out here. European giants Ajax arrive at Celtic Park on July the 24th in what promises to be a real test of where the team stands heading into the new campaign. The schedule concludes with a match against either Como or Al Ahly on July the 26th or 27th, rounding off a challenging run of fixtures. The league season is set to start the weekend after. So with a League and League Cup double to defend and a Scottish Cup to reclaim, not to mention Champions League qualifiers looming in August, the summer fixtures offer an important chance for Rodgers to get his side firing early. All eyes will be on new signings, returning loanees and emerging talents looking to impress over the next month. So, Andy, it's good news for the fans, really. Everything barring the Newcastle game will be on Celtic TV. We did give them a bit of a ripping, but deservedly so sometimes. And as Kaiser alluded to, I think it was on the last podcast, maybe the broadcast should be looked at, and it's something Celtic could look at to make this TV channel a lot better for fans.
I certainly want to change the presenters because they're absolutely rotten. I think their service is pish. When it works, it's really bad. When it doesn't work, it actually works better than when it works. Honestly, it's listen, the computer or the schedules you want. We are meant to be a worldwide professional football club, and we certainly don't have a channel to match it. That's for sure. There's plenty of fans out there that could group together and do a better job than the ones that are doing it. I think so. They're missing out on so much. Even when you look at some of the studios, sometimes it looks as if it's been put together in somebody's bedroom. Pretty poor. But it is what it is, and it's what we need to work with. This whole pre-season thing, I've said it before about Ajax. I simply wouldn't entertain Ajax in any shape or form. We have got previews for them. Their fans are absolute scumbags, and I just wouldn't. That's one fixture I am not happy with, is the fact that we are facing Ajax. It's different when you're in a European competition or something like that. You need to face them. This is this is voluntary that we're entertaining this mob, and I just wouldn't get near them with a barge pole. But still, it's good to get the football back overall in general. I'm going away to Greece on the 12th of July, so I will miss the Newcastle. No, I won't. I'll actually catch up with it. I think it's behind closed doors on the 12th, isn't it? So we're not going to see that anyway. So I will catch up with the other games. Who's that? Unrestricted view. Who is that? Is that Ryan?
Yeah.
The comment for it. Did you put that up? Don't know who it is. It's Ryan. Good to see
the Ajax game is away. That's correct. It's not at Celtic Park.
All right. Okay. Well, still want to play them.
It's in Como, that one, isn't it? So, yeah. Kaiser, I know that you're, you spoke very well about it on the last podcast, but it's nice that they're pretty much got the whole pre-season games covered, barring that Newcastle one. What's your thoughts on it, mate? We know you gave your full spiel on it the last time about having a better channel and stuff like that, but it's just good to see that the fans are going to get to see all these games in it.
Yeah, it's excellent that we're going to get to watch. We can watch for the comfort of our own home. We don't need to travel to Italy and stuff. Nobody's booking flights. I'm sure there'll be some diehard fans booking flights over there anyway to watch and enjoy the weather. Not to mention the fact that there's 3 of the sides there, Sporting Lisbon, Newcastle and Ajax have already qualified for the Champions League. So that's 3 direct Champions League opponents. That's a fantastic build-up to Champions League qualifications. And in my opinion, it's really good opposition for us to be facing and build ourselves up. And as I said, Scotty, Celtic TV, we could run that correctly, right? You could run that, as I said, you could purchase a production company with cameras and send them everywhere under the Celtic banner, film the games ourselves, transmit that ourselves, broadcast it live like a Netflix type service, £10 a month, and being modest about it. 600,000 fans buy that. That's £6 million a month, every single month, £72 million a year, and we're settling for pittance from Sky TV. Not only that, we're being held to ransom when they want to put us on, when they don't want to put us on. They're all on fixtures, times. Seen how it's affecting the fans coming from Ireland, Paddy. You'll be feeling that as well, mate, with them adjusting times of games and stuff to fit us into what suits them when they've got an open time. Celtic should, to quote a famous movie, you should stop squabbling for the scraps from the English Premier League table and strike out and take our own. Celtic should have their own channel. It should be fully equipped, all advertising, all Celtic products, all linked straight back to the club. I've seen Celtic sell toasters, microwaves, kettles, all under the brand of Celtic. Because it's got a Celtic badge on it, I will buy it. So all that should be going directly back into the club, and all that can be advertised on our own channel. We can utilise so much good content. Celtic, all they need to do is look at around the podcasts and the podcast community that they've got out here. The people who have got the skills, the technical skills for live streaming, creating content, hosting, contributing. There's so much out here, so much that could be done. It's just indicative of a club trapped in the 1980s, ran by dinosaurs and thinking that they know best when the modern world is advancing so fast. I was happy when we brought in the guy for iPhone. I believe it was a guy for Apple who worked on the iPhone apps and stuff like that you get through there. But obviously the board is looking at that as just a way to milk money, milk every single penny they can, when they should provide us with a legitimate service for a half-decent fee, not a handsome fee, a half-decent fee, £10 a month. Who wouldn't pay that for all your Celtic content in one place? Every Celtic game, every cup game, every Champions League game, every qualifier, every pre-season game. And not only that, you've got a back catalogue of previous games when there's no games on. You've got podcasts and content that's specifically tied with the club, promoting the club and helping the club grow. So many young people coming out of college doing multimedia courses and editing courses. We wouldn't need to have edited VAR lines thrown by squinty-eyed Sammy and one eye's at a shop and the other eye's running home with a change. And the 18-yard lines directly across the pitch, and relative to what we're looking, you can take a line straight for that and draw it across to the players. They alter it. You can see the lines bending and stuff. There was the one I remember all the time with Jota, and the offside drilling was for Google Earth or something. It was a roof cam for the stadium at the other side of the stadium. One of the best ones I seen was someone last season. It was a fan in the crowd who filmed it for their mobile, and it actually looked like better coverage. You can get phones, you get cameras nowadays, 4K high definition cameras mounted on a gambit that moves and tracks play. All you need to do is mount them at the side of the pitch and focus them on the ball and tell it to track the ball. They track the ball wherever it goes. It is so simple. It's so easy done, relatively cheap. It's not talking like 50, 60 million to set this up. We're talking about a couple of £1 million investment for Celtic, and you're marketing that on the returns of £6 million a month at a modest estimate and £72 million a year. That would definitely up Celtic's wage, spending power, up everything about the club. I see a lot of chat going around about building a new paradise as well. I'm loving that. I'm loving the fact that people are now, what you get in the Celtic community is everyone who's anyone, right? When we talk about the youth system, when we talk about the television, when we talk about the league, when we talk about everyone who's anyone can tell you the problems. Everyone can tell you the problems. Start thinking of solutions. I like people who think outside the box. Think of the solution rather than the problem, and then go and pitch it to the club. I would love a meeting. See the people in charge at Celtic, executives, people in charge of direction, marketing and stuff like that. I would love to sit down and get a meeting with them. See if anything, I could give them a PowerPoint presentation which would deliver some food for thought, caviar for the brain. I'm rubbing my hands at the thought just now. I'm like, get us in there, get us in for a meeting. Guys will put his suit on. I've seen a couple of comments in the chat as well, legends. Look, I was at hospital with my son earlier this week. He was in for an MRI, which involves him because he's autism going under a general anaesthetic. It was a bit traumatic to try and subdue my son until they anaesthetised him. But other than that, everything went off without an absolute hitch. He was absolutely a little warrior, man. So thanks for your words of support and stuff in chat, legends. And as always, thanks for supporting the podcast and being here. Make sure you're smashing like. It helps combat the YouTube algorithm and pushes us out to so many Celtic fans. And if you've not already, hit subscribe and hit the bell. And that'll do me, Scotty, my man.
Bang on, mate. Bang on. Paddy, we know that you're always across every game, mate, that you can get to with the grandson, home and away when you can. But it's nice that you can put your feet up, mate, for the next few weeks and chill out and watch the mighty Celtic TV and get these pre-season fixtures from the comfort of your own home.
It will be, Scott. Well, we're going down to Cork. We'll be in Cork for the Cork game, and then we're going back. We're going over for the Newcastle game. So we'll be over for those two. Do you know what? It's just a shame because, I've said it before, the guys that do the marketing at Celtic, whoever they are, if you're not if you can't properly market Celtic, well then get out and get somebody else in who can, because we're not being marketed properly with this here. Celtic TV, as Andy says, at best the coverage is a shambles. I appreciate sometimes when they go out to these far-flung places that maybe facilities are not great, but it's not the facilities that are the problem. It's the presentation. It's a disaster. And it's all right if it's a free service, if you're offering a free service, but they're not offering a free service. They're taking £50, £80 a year, £100 a year off people for subscriptions to this. And if you're charging people for a subscription, the very least, the very bare minimum you should expect is that the thing works when it's supposed to work. Everybody will tell you the same as myself. You get a far better coverage on these other streams. Not suggesting for 1 second that anybody's using a Fire Stick, but I've heard of people using Fire Sticks. But you get this. I've seen me switching on to Hibs TV. It works perfectly. I've gone to Dundee TV. It works perfectly. Motherwell TV. It works flawlessly. I just don't understand why Celtic TV can't get it. Why they can't get it right.
Some amount of subscriptions there, Paddy.
That's the way it goes. Those other they work very well. They work very well, and more often than not, that's why I end up usually watching them. If I'm watching a game, that's what I'm usually watching it on, because the Celtic TV just goes and sometimes it never comes back. So they need to look at this. They really do need to look at it. We're a Champions League club. We're a massive European club. If it means investing some money, I see this talk of this Celtic mobile for like £25 a month. Like, who wants anything to do with that? You know what I mean? They'd be far better asking people for a subscription towards a top quality TV service, never mind a mobile phone service. So listen, I just hope they get it right. But there's some cracking games there, Scotty, for to whet the appetite for the season. As I say, I'm really looking forward to the trip up to Cork. I'm not even going to go there. I'm looking forward to the trip down to Cork, and then we'll be back over again for Newcastle on the 19th. So some great games to get the season going, and hopefully before you know it, we'll be back again to the grind again from the league. The league campaign begins at the first week of August, and that will be us started again. So really looking forward to it again.
Yeah, mate. And
sorry, mate, I interrupted you again. I'm going to see if I can maybe try and get a load down to Cork for when we're playing. Maybe trying to even take in the atmosphere would be good.
Absolutely.
Anybody out there, if you're using one of these, right? If you're using one of these devices, make sure you use a VPN. Install the VPN and make sure you set your location to Iceland. Iceland has the most relaxed copyright laws in the entire world. They can't catch you if they don't know where you are.
I've also got a cracking buffet collection as well.
Yeah, they do the canapes and the sausage rolls.
And I'm glad that Paddy never read that comment out. We've got just loads of dirty buggers in this bloody chat, I tell you. We have 140 people watching us live at the minute, and as our Kaiser said, if this is your first time watching this podcast, then please like, share and subscribe. We're flying at the minute and the views are going up, the subscriptions are going up. Please support the channel and we'll keep bringing this fantastic content for you. Last thing for us tonight, ladies and gentlemen, before the last man standing that we've got for you is the wee guy that doesn't age, Andy. Sean Maloney. He's like your Simon Donnelly, friend of the show, and he just does not age, the wee guy. So Sean Maloney has officially returned to Celtic, taking on the role of professional player pathway manager, and a move that strengthens the club's focus on youth development. The appointment was confirmed by the club on Wednesday afternoon, with Maloney stepping into the position vacated by Darren O'Day, who left earlier this summer to join Swansea as assistant manager. And that was the club's tweet earlier on. Maloney, only 41, incredibly, brings a wealth of experience both from his playing days and his time in coaching. After hanging up his boots, he initially began his coaching journey with the Celtic development squad before moving on to a role with the Belgian national team under Roberto Martinez. He's also had managerial stints at Hibs, Wigan, and most recently leaving the latter in March. Celtic's statement outlined Maloney's responsibilities, bridging the gap between the academy and the first team, ensuring promising talents are given the right opportunities, including well-managed loan moves to gain valuable experience. Maloney expressed his pride at returning. It's a huge honour to be given this opportunity to return to Celtic in a role which I'm really passionate about. My aim will be work really closely between our academy and the first team and create the very best opportunities for success. Brendan Rodgers also welcomed the move on the club's website. He's someone I believe will make a great contribution to the club in this area. He's an intelligent guy who knows what it takes to be a successful Celtic player. One of the clubs that Celtic could be looking to work closely with is Queen's Park, as we mentioned in the podcast over the past few weeks. Reports in recent weeks and months suggest that the two sides will be looking to strike a deal which will see some of Celtic's top prospects head to the Championship side on loan. Young players from Scotland would be able to move freely between two clubs if a deal is struck. Something we touched on, Andy, I know it's something you're a massive advocate of on this channel, is, the youth setup, and it's been pretty shite, to be honest, for years. We keep losing them before they fall off the end of the conveyor belt. They're going down to England. And to be fair, we're doing it to teams in England as well. We're nicking their top talent. But we're getting a guy like Sean Maloney in place. This might stop this from happening. A guy who knows what it takes to come through the youth system at Celtic. Great signing for me, mate.
Aye, and Darnley Day was the same. A guy that went through the system, so he was in a pretty good position. Obviously, he's moved on. So to get Sean in with his experience is a pretty good capture. I take it in a position he just does no coaching at all. It's not about the coaching. It's basically just guiding them and try to pinpoint them in the right direction when it comes to clubs and stuff like that. So I suppose maybe not getting the full benefit of Sean Maloney when it comes to the kind of coaching side of it, I suppose, but experience-wise and obviously been through the system, then he's a good appointment. I still see him as a wee boy. Even as a 41-year-old man, he still looks like a wee boy to me. I mind years and years ago, I seen him in the Players' Lounge at Celtic Park. I think he was injured. It was a European night. And he came in and people were getting autographs and that, and I'm just looking at him going, you're just like a wee boy with a suit jacket on. That's what he looked like. It's like the thing out of see that scene out of Big, where he comes back home and he sits too back. It's kind of like that. I just couldn't take him serious. But I think obviously a good appointment for Celtic to appoint him. And any positivity in that department is a good thing. Because I think we have failed the players. I think we have failed the players, to be honest with you. Some of these players are only getting recognised until they're maybe getting one first team appearance, and it seems to be at the end of their contract, and then it's too late. They've already sorted out a future because I've not seen a pathway through into first team. Even if they get one first team appearance, you never really see them all again. Mitchell Frame and players like that have just vanished. I know he had a wee injury for a while, but we don't see it consistently enough, which is really disappointing because they are one thing we're talking about at Lisbon Lions, all homegrown players, all within 30 miles of Celtic Park. Obviously, we're never going to get back to that, having a full team, but you want to see a few coming through, don't you? That's it. That you don't want to be buying players on all the time. Otherwise, there's absolutely no point in having a youth structure or a youth academy. Lennoxtown is no worth anything anymore. I know they're moving out to Barrowfield now, but for me, I think we've got to give Maloney all the opportunity in the world to try and get us some really good talent coming through, and we have a high chance of getting into the first team. But as we said before, sometimes we're our own worst enemy because the pressure is on us to win every single point and win every single game. So taking the chance and bringing these players through, you can understand the pressure the manager is under, that it's very hard to put your trust on them unless there's some kind of generational talent like a Kieran Tierney or something. Even at that, the only reason he gets his chance is because Azagiri was injured. So you never get injured with Tia get his chance, and look what we're missing out on. There's the signs there say if you give somebody a chance, that's the player you're getting. No, every player's going to be like that, but there must be some wee gems in there somewhere.
Yeah, Kaiser, it's really good news. And I think something that was in the slides there is that Brendan, I'm not saying that Darren O'Day wasn't it, because he was as well, but he's got a man in that he can trust that's going to do that job. And that takes a bit of slack off Brendan now. He's got a guy in there, along with Darren O'Day, that can say, this boy is ready for the first team. And that's important at a club like Celtic.
Yeah, 100%, Scotty, spot on. Sean Maloney, fantastic player for us when he played for us as well. He moved into coaching, really excellent coaching experience. The coaches he's worked with, Martinez and that, I seen him mentioned in the chat, part of the Belgian setup as well. I think he was working with him with. So clearly when he was on the coaching courses with these people, he really impressed. For me, a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience. This is more than just jobs for the boys. This is a legitimate pathway manager, much the same as I seen Darren O'Day as someone who knows what it's like to fight through the trenches and win their way into the first team. As we know with football, it's a question of timing and also luck. Some of the players came in there. Andy mentioned Kieran Tierney gets Nakamura's boots as a young boy, and then Izagiri picks up an injury when Izagiri was absolutely flying. Kieran Tierney gets the chance because he was there and able, and I'm sure he had a lot of people screaming for him to get a chance as well. But yeah, I like to see a lot of our young players. I'm always an advocate. I'm always calling for Celtic to establish the Celtic group by teams like Shamrock Rovers, a team in the League of Ireland, a team in Australia, a team in the US, a team in Australia where we've got large fan bases, lots of CSCs, and make our players interchangeable. Take players from the B side and exchange them about, gaining experience in different leagues in different parts of the world. Exposure to European football and all that through the League of Ireland as well, be it the Champions League, the Conference League, or the Europa League. They get that experience, and if they're hitting it in there, if they're doing well in there, then it makes it all the easier to bridge the chasm to come into the Celtic first team. I seen someone asking about the top. It's a Viacenza top for the other year legends. It's my absolute favourite. Everywhere I go, people stop me and ask me, like, what's that top? Where'd you get that from? But I bought it online. Top recommendation: if you're a large, buy an extra large. If you're an extra large, buy an extra large. Always buy a size bigger. It's utterly brutal, but cheap enough and easy enough to buy.
Paddy, Sean Maloney, mate. For me, an absolutely outstanding signing for the club, by the way, as a pathway manager. As Kaiser and Andy already alluded to, some experience he's got already for a 41-year-old. I think he'll be great for the club. What's your thoughts on this appointment, mate?
A really good forward-thinking appointment, Scott, for me. By all accounts, Darren O'Day was doing an impressive job as well. And that's why Swansea came calling for him, and you can't ask the guy to turn down an opportunity to go down there. But Sean Maloney was a cracking wee player. One of my favourite players as a Celtic player. Really good wee servant for us, and he's went away and learned his trade somewhere else, to be a manager in his own right at both Hibs and Wigan, and he's worked alongside Roberto Martinez in the Belgian squad, and I know that they thought very, very highly of him. He was an integral part of what they were doing there, that very exciting Belgian team of a couple of years ago. So this can only be beneficial for us, Scott. I feel sometimes that the club gets a bit of unfair criticism, Scott. Our youth setup maybe isn't producing the number of young players that we could, but as Andy said, that we're always under massive pressure to achieve results, both at home and in Europe, and sometimes the desire to blood young players can sometimes be met with the realism that you need to get the job done tonight, or you need to get the 3 points this afternoon. And that can play into it, So again, I would also highlight, that there is and has been a pathway for these young players. It's been clouded somewhat by the guys that we've seen left, but you've seen guys like Daniel Kelly and Rocco Vata are just two that off the top of my head. And like, what have they done since they left Celtic? Ben Doak, fair enough, he got a move to Liverpool, but what have they done in the game since they've gone and left Celtic? And that just tells me that Brendan is absolutely spot on. And his estimation that these young lads, they're not ready yet. They're just not ready, and that's been proved. Because if they were ready and first team ready, they would have gone down there and they would have performed. But they've barely kicked the ball. Rocco Vata only got a few games for Watford towards the end of the season. Daniel Kelly has hardly kicked the ball for Millwall. So that tells me that not so much there's not a pathway for the young players. It's just these young players are getting to a certain age and their heads are being turned by agents with the big money that's available on these, with all due respect to these nobody clubs in England. Would you not be better staying and trying to fight for your place at Celtic is sitting on the bench at Watford, or Millwall, So listen, it'll only be a good thing, as I say. Sean Maloney knows himself, the same as Darren O'Day. He came right through the ranks and knows exactly what's required to be a Celtic player, and knows exactly the characteristics and the skills that you need to be a young player and break through into the first team. So it will be brilliant for Brendan to have somebody like that, as you say, especially with this new arrangement with the other clubs. So you could be looking at Queen's Park. We've already spoken about Neil Lennon, Dunfermline, and Scott Brown down at Ayr, Mark Wilson now as well, so Partick Thistle. So Sean will be working with all these guys, to hopefully there'll be players coming and going in both directions there that will serve us well. But I think it's a really good appointment myself.
Yeah. Welcome back to the wee man. Andy, I've just noticed this in the chat. Who's that guy there on the right-hand side?
Aye, you were talking about, I'm not sure if we're going to bring us up about lines that you've met. So believe it or not, this is actually me on the right-hand side in the year 2000, January 2000 at Celtic Park. And wee Jinky was there, so got a picture with him. So that's me at 21 stone and with hair. So
21 years old, Andy.
I think I've aged like a fine wine.
Wee man was scared not to get a picture with you, Andy.
He's son. You must have travelled. Oh, you must have travelled a while to get here. I was just back from Australia, so I had a bit of a tan. I was like, I've came from Castlemilk, Jinky. All right, no bother.
Absolutely outstanding photo. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now the time you all love.
Last man standing.
So, if you haven't played this game before or seen this segment, we are going to anoint, and give the crown to our number 9 this evening. We've gone old school with our numbers, number 1 to number 11. So the number 9 jersey will be our striker tonight. That's the team that we've picked already. But who are they going to be feeding the ball to bang the goals in for you this evening? Ladies and gentlemen, the panel is going to pick, because we have 3 on the panel, but we still want your comments to come in. There's going to be 10 strikers, but who is going to be the last man standing? Paddy, up first for you this evening. We have Frank McGarvey, and he is up against a man who banged in over 40 goals for us in one season, Lee Griffiths. Who are you picking and why? Get your comments in, folks, and we will certainly fire them up for you.
2 great players for Celtic, Scott. 2 fantastic goal scorers, but this one for me is an easy one. I'm going to go for Frank McGarvey. Just a different class. Started off he was at St Mirren, went down to Liverpool. Didn't really work out for him when we brought him back from Liverpool. If memory serves me right, we paid $250,000 for Frank McGarvey. The wee man came back and just lit Celtic Park up. His movement, his speed of thought, his finishing ability. He got kicked up and down all week in, week out, but he just kept dusting himself down and coming back for more. Lee Griffiths was a wonderful servant as well, but I didn't like Griffiths' attitude, in certain things. I think he could have done a lot more for himself away from the park. Frank McGarvey, one of those players that just that team of the late 70s, early 80s, just wonderful memories of, some of the games, some of the goals that Frank McGarvey was involved in. The 85 Cup final, the 100 Scottish Cup final against Dundee United. When Dundee United were just thinking that Davy Provin's equaliser was going to get them extra time, Frank pops up with that winning goal from Roy Aitken's cross on the right-hand side. And just that goal just summed up Frank McGarvey for me. We're only getting going too. So for me, it's Frank McGarvey. Scott, go with wee Frank.
No worries at all. Kaiser, it's very 50-50 in the chat, believe it or not. Who are you picking, mate? McGarvey or Griffiths, and why?
As I says, legends, as a young man, I didn't know too much about Frank McGarvey, but when I seen him come back to Paradise and the way he acted on the pitch and that towards the end of his life, how he was with the fans, made me really go back and take a look at the footage of him and see how good a player he really was. I seen comments in there calling him the rubber man because he get knocked down and sprung straight back up again and stuff. Yeah, absolutely amazing player. And Griffith as well, fantastic player for us, 40 goals in a season, absolutely fantastic servant. I remember him tying his scarf to the goalpost and stuff like that. And he's 2 goals for Scotland against England as well, went to big Joe Hart, who eventually came in for us and was fantastic for us. Griff scoring the 2 goals. It sticks out in the mind, perhaps with me being somewhat of a younger generation, right? I'm going to go for Griffith. I'm going to lean that way and leave it to Big Andy, since he's lost about 20 stone and he's a lessy tracky Andy's hair.
No, mate, hey, that's fair enough picking Lee Griffiths, by the way. You know, it was very, very 50-50 in the chat. I don't know if it is an age thing or, like you said, you know, people did pick him. He was 40-goal season striker, man. So, sorry, Andy, you have the decision to make. Is it Frank McGarvey or is it Lee Griffiths?
People are asking how I managed to lose all the weight. I turned out I was diabetic, so I had to lose the weight. So I never put it back on. I was just taking my meds there actually at week 2.
It's that fine wine, Andy.
I know. I did say that, but nobody took me up on that. It was just kind of brushed aside. There you go. My missus seems to think I look better now than what I did, even though I'm a lot older. But I managed to play football with Frank McGarvey 5-a-sides. Later in life, Frank was a joiner, and I worked in a sawmill, East End Sawmills at the time. It's no longer there, in London on Dermarnock Road, and we used to play 5s every Tuesday or kind of Wednesday, or every couple of weeks of play 5s, and it was the ones up in East Kilbride, and Frank was in getting wood, and money boy says, we play 5-a-sides, fancy having a game? He's like, aye, no bother, I'll come. So he told us Frank McGarvey's coming. Nobody believed him. Turned up, sure enough, there he's there. And I'm no kidding, even at the age he was. And this is probably around about the same time that picture was taken with Jinky, around about that period, maybe a year out for there. He's walking about the park, just walking about the park, and nobody could get the ball off him. But not just that, he's giving you wee pointers. And I know it's just a 5-a-side game, but he's giving you wee tips here and there, do this and do that. The guy was absolutely superb. I seen Mary Griffiths and I did with Frank, obviously, you know, it was kind of, because I'm just a young thing. But obviously you've got that iconic goal in the 85 Cup final. Never forget that. Frank was and I've seen plenty of footage of Frank. Frank was a superb player. Fantastic player, servant to the club. And you can see, as Kaiser just touched on, when he knew, you know, his days were kind of numbered, you know, he came out of Celtic Park, and I don't think MD had a dry eye that day, whether they're watching it on the TV or in the stadium. It was a very, very, very hard thing. And then to see the passing of Frank was really heartbreaking. But I'm going to go with Griffiths as well. I think as a goal scorer, it was just unbelievable. And not just for Celtic, mind you, 2 goals against Joe Hart for Scotland, the 2 free kicks.
Yeah.
You know, the guy was gifted. He certainly had an attitude problem. It wasn't professional enough. So if it just come down to that, I would go with McGarvey. But I think Griffiths as a goal scorer was just unbelievable. So I'm going to go with Griffiths. And incidentally, someday, because he tied the scarf around the post and a zombie had put a message up, I'm going to, what is it, tie that scarf around your neck or something? I'm going to tie that scarf around your neck. And he replied saying, is that not where it's meant to go? Do you know what I mean? They had them on toast. And then obviously your club's teammate beat it and stuff like that. So I'm going to go with Griff here.
Okay. So Lee Griffiths has the number 9 jersey as it stands. Patrick, he's now up against another shagger. Frank McAvenny.
Oh dear. Tough one too. And people are going to think I'm not a fan of Lee Griffiths. That's not the case. But Frank McAvenny, guys, what a player. came in and just absolutely lit up the Celtic first team. Just a massive part of what we did in that centenary season. Should have been a Celtic player long before he was, and should have stayed longer than he did. Two fantastic goal scorers, without a shadow of a doubt. But I'm going to go with McAvenny on this one, Scott.
Okay, mate. Nice and easy. Like it. Kaiser, Frank McAvenny or Lee Griffiths, the battle of the Mad Shaggers.
Exactly as you said, my man. Unfortunately, my main memory of Macca is actually for the comedy Only an Excuse when he was getting chased with a taxi. And it was actually at the end of the street where I live. He was chased by a taxi and he does this sidestep and the taxi turns left and he runs right. That's obviously testament to his skill on the footballing field. Lucky enough to see some footage and stuff of Macca in his heyday playing. Fantastic player, absolutely fantastic. But for me, I'm going to keep it simple as well. I'm going to stick with Griff. Macca, undisputed mad shagger. When they leave him alone with my mum, my sister, or my budgie. But definitely, I'm going to go for Mad Griff. I'm going to stick with Lee Griffith.
No problem. So there we go. Andy, you have the decision to make yet again, my man. Is it going to be McAvenny or is it going to be Griffiths? You stick with Griffiths?
Just what Kaiser's touching on that sketch for Home Excuse. There was also the other one where he's fueling up, gets in to pay for the fuel, and the guy says, pump 2, and he's like, no, yet, but I'm working on it. Brilliant. I'm going to go with McAvenny. Yeah,
Okay.
Very iconic figure, cracking player as well, by the way. Let's not forget that. And he wasn't just a goal scorer, he was more than that. He get really involved in the game as well. Very robust player. And iconic, as I say, you can look back to that 88 Cup final now, instrumentally within that. And look at a game at Snake Mountain as well, when he's turning around for his backup in that situation, nobody's with him. I think Andy Walker had run away, left him there himself, that whole kind of carry on with it, that mob. But Frank's definitely an icon of the club, and as a wee guy, you kind of, and he's got the dyed hair and all that kind of stuff. The stuff that was out in the 80s. There, I'm going to go with McAvenny on this.
Okay, so Frank McAvenny has the jersey, Patrick, and he's now up against Brian McClare.
Oh, we always knew this was going to be a tough one, didn't we? We just knew this was going to be a nightmare, this one here.
Brutal picking these 10, by the way. Brutal.
And like when you look through the list, Scott, I'm sure if you look through when you were doing your research, even trying to get it down to 10 players, we've been very, very fortunate. We've been spoiled. We've had some great goal scorers, and I think that's the one. I think that's the one lesson that we could hope that Adam Ida learns. Maybe this summer, that you can't play up front for Celtic and not be a goal scorer. It just doesn't. It just doesn't work. You've got to produce the goods. Brian McClare, just a fantastic signing, a fantastic player. We got him for a pittance from Motherwell, 60,000 or something. I think we paid for Motherwell. Paid Motherwell for him. Fantastic player. Developed into a better player probably. When he went down south, he probably fulfilled his potential. Whereas we would rather if he'd stayed. Again, just two wonderful, wonderful goal scorers. And it's just a personal thing for me. I'm going to stick with Frank McAvenny on this one purely and simply because I didn't like the way Brian McClare's career at Celtic ended. I remember reading in Billy McNeil one of the articles that Billy McNeil wrote that he just felt that he was having a meeting with Brian McClare and his agent, and he felt McClare was just going through the motions. He was just fulfilling the meeting for the sake of it. And I didn't like that after Billy McNeil was the one who basically gave him the break and stuff. So just because of that sort of soured it in my book. Like I have a few guys here who are Manchester United men, and they will tell you that Brian McClare was probably one of the best signings they ever made. So McClare was very, very highly thought of down in England with Manchester United. But for Celtic, I'm going to stick with Frank McAvenny.
Okay. Frank McAvenny has the jersey, Kaiser. It's probably 90%, I would say, for Brian McClare in the comments. But are you sticking with Paddy, going with McAvenny? Are you giving Andy a very difficult decision to make yet again?
Yeah, first and foremost, right, legends in the chat and legends on the pod, we might all know, we might have seen this segment and we all know the destination here, right? We all know where the final destination is, but it's about more than that. It's about the journey as well. So, Scotty, thanks very much for putting this together and making it such challenging decisions along the way, my man. Very, very hard thing to do. For me, right, I'm going to go with Chalky, and I'm going to put it right on Andy because I know he's got a night where he's going to be meeting them on Friday. So I'm going to put it right on Andy, and we're going to take a clip of this and we're going to send it to Chalky, my man. So you better watch what you say.
Wait. So Andy, you have the decision to make yet again. Is it going to be the centenary season hero, Frank McAvenny, or is it going to be Brian McClare for you?
Again, this is actually very difficult for me because McClare, another hero, part of that wonderful game at Love Street as well, couple of goals. And part of that Mace fantastic goal, and it was Judas that actually finished it off. McClare was part of that. One of the best goals I've ever seen, McGrain, McStay, McClare, the ball in, and Judas puts it away. I could watch that goal every day for the rest of my life, but I turn it off right at the very end. I can't watch him doing that. I can't watch him sticking that ball in the back of the net, and he's ruined my life because of that. That absolute cunt. Sorry for my language, but that's what he is.
That's terrible.
I'm sorry, but that's what he is. But when it comes to McClare, what a player he was as well. Let's not forget, he scored an absolute belter against Rangers in the cup final and we lost it. And it never really gets talked about. But it was a cracking goal he scored. McClare obviously went down the road. Man United did a very good career with him as well. Very, very intelligent player. I like him. He's a cool guy. He's somebody that actually doesn't care. He turns up with his shorts on and whatever, just a t-shirt. He's just a normal guy. He's Big Bird now. He's quite iconic now. But he's actually, although he's got a dry wit, he's a very, very funny guy. Even just the looks he gives the camera and stuff like that, he's quite comedic. But as a player, I'm gonna go away, and it's not just because I'm going to see him on Friday.
Aye, it is.
Maybe a wee bit. I'm going to go with Brian McClare on this one.
Brian McClare has got the jersey. He's ripped it off Frank McAvenny, but can he keep it off this man, Patrick? Paolo Di Canio.
Oh, tough one again, but you know what? Di Canio was absolutely world class. Unfortunately, maybe he didn't find himself maybe playing in the best Celtic team at the time defensively. But when he first came to the club, you remember the Canio, Cadet, Van Hooydonk, Andy Tom. Some of the weapons that we had going forward was frightening. But we needed to score 4 or 5 goals every game because we were letting in 2 or 3 at the other end. And that turned out to be Tommy Burns' Achilles heel. No, Di Canio was definitely world class, and the problem for me was sometimes he was 2 moves ahead of some of the guys he was playing with. Unfortunately for us, we were pretty poor at that time, and as I say, Di Canio came from Italy, and he ended up playing with some players who maybe didn't cover themselves in glory with Celtic, and I thought he was sometimes just far better than what we had. But as a goal scorer, there's no comparison. There's absolutely no comparison. I'm going to go with Brian McClare.
Okay, mate. Kaiser, Brian McClare or Di Canio? Are you giving Andy another decision to make?
Well, not this time. I'm going to stick with Brian McClare as well. Absolutely loved Paolo Di Canio when he was at Celtic, one of the 3 amigos as well. Fantastic play, fantastic player. Seen some interviews after time. I think it was Cy Ferry and stuff that was talking about when they worked under him as a manager, and he wasn't too complimentary about his time in Scotland. That and the fact that he's a disgusting fascist and deserves to be hung upside down. That also, but big chalky all the way. I'm going to make it easy on Andy since I've made it hard on him every other time.
So Chalky's got the jersey, Andy. But are you making a case for Di Canio?
No. Why would I do that?
Yeah.
I've already spoke about Judas and obviously different players doing different things, but I feel about him not quite as bad as Judas, but he's up that kind of same avenue with me. I think his attitude at Celtic was disgusting. Cracking player, definitely gifted player, but
Goal against Aberdeen, man.
yeah, he's not taking the jersey off of McClare.
No.
Absolutely no chance, for his. Obviously his views are his views. I certainly don't agree with that in any shape or form. And I'd say the majority of our fans and MD kind of run about our club feels the same as well. That is not what we're about. I think it might have been always his intention to play his ticket to get down south, obviously, and it just kind of played into his hands. When all that happened, with Fergus obviously promising this and promising that, and maybe no delivering. It might be true, it might not. But anyway, the fans loved him at that time, and for me, it was just edging his way out. And as Kaiser said, he's no really had anything complimentary. It's always about power, isn't it? Always has been.
Yeah.
For me, McClare, 100%.
Okay, so Patrick, Brian McClare still has the jersey. He's now up against Big Bad John.
Oh dear, it gets worse. Oh dear, two great servants. Again, and Big John, probably one of these guys who didn't really know an awful lot about Celtic until he came, and then he's one of these guys who got us big style. Massive part of Martin O'Neill's team. When you think back to that era, that sort of 2000 to sort of 2004, 2005, Big John was a massive part of what we were trying to do. And some people say if he hadn't been injured or suspended or whatever it was, we might have made a difference in Seville. That's a tough one, Scott. It really is. We're still, although we play a different style of football now, John Hartson's exactly the sort of big centre forward that Adam Eden needs to be. He needs to be 6 or 8 yards out, and he needs to be getting on the end of the crosses that are coming in from the sides. Big John maybe wasn't the greatest footballer in the world, but he knew how to score goals. He knew how to use his frame, his physique. He bullied the centre half, and when the ball was in that area, he knew how to finish. But it's a very, very tough one, Scott. But I'm going to stick with Brian McClare on this one, just on his ability outside the box. McClare was a very, very clever footballer, very, very clever guy. Probably his link-up play and his set-up play for other players was probably maybe better than Big John, but I'm going to stick with Brian McClare on this one.
Okay, mate. Kaiser, you're going to give Andy another decision to make? Is it John Hartson or is it Brian McClare for you?
For me, legends, I'm going to stick with Brian McClare as well. Love Big John. He's been through such struggles. I remember him going for the mob across the road and I'm not signing him because he failed the medical, talking about his knee and stuff like that. And we just brought him in and he absolutely thrived for us. Absolute excellent servant for the club. And part of the Three Masters of Disaster, as I call them, Big Chris, Henry and Big John. Absolutely brilliant. Paddy hit a nail in the head. Knew how to use his physique, knew how to shield the ball, knew how to put himself about without getting carded as well. Absolutely fantastic player. But Chalky still takes it for me. Still just Big Chalky, just with the ability and his play outside the box as well. The way he included other players. You heard Andy speak about the goal that Judas Ascaria scored as well, and Chalky being involved in that. And just that outside of the box play just edges it for me just ever so slightly. But Big John, as I said earlier on, with CBD toilet paper and the somebody said in chat, be careful, that stuff makes your ass claps. Maybe that's just you, big man. Bumhole like a wizard sleeve. But for me, Chalky keeps it for me.
Okay, so Brian McClare still has the jersey, Andy, but we want your opinion, sir. Would you have gave it to Big Bad John there?
No, I'd have stuck with McClare. Just talking about that ball grill, guys, it need to be some strong stuff to collapse Big John's ass, because it's something he had with fucking surprise last night. All cans of Coke and crisps and all that, that's where they all get stored. I remember Keane came to Celtic and John Hartson's up the back of he's telling the story. John Hartson's up the back of bus with a can of Coke and a packet of crisps. Like, the fuck's going on here? Know what I mean? Roy Keane, ultimate pro, you know. But I think obviously, Big John, fantastic. Another iconic player. Somebody, Celtic was never his first love, but he certainly loves the club now. Been through so much in his life, his career, you know. And by the way, I love Big John, even for just connecting with Berkovic when he was doing it at West Ham. Superb. That needs framed and put up in the Louvre or something like that. The Louvre.
Hang in the Louvre.
Aye. But I'm going to stick with McClare on this one, unfortunately for Big John. Aye, McClare for me.
Okay, so he's on some run. Brian McClare, Patrick. I was hoping for a nice battle here for this next one, but it hasn't worked out this way. But anyway, Brian McClare is now up against.
Oh, God. That's hectic. Oh, dear. Do you know what? I could say similar things about Chris Sutton that I did about Big John. But I love Big Sutton. I just love him. I love the guys. I just love him. I love his comments on TV. I love the way he winds them up. Massive part of what Martin O'Neill was trying to do. Massive part. You know, you heard it yourself from Henrik Larsson himself. Larsson scored the goals that he scored because of Chris Sutton being his partner. It's a tough one, Scott. It really is a tough one. Oh, dear. Just thinking back to some of the goals, you know what I mean? When you think of him scoring after a minute and a half or 2 minutes in the 6-2 game, you know what I mean? You just get your Celtic career off and running with a goal against them, and he never looked back. You know what I mean? Just, you know, even the first game against Dundee United, he scores the winner in the last kick of the ball at Tannadice. You know, a fantastic big player for us, and just for the contribution and for the difference that he made to us whenever he came in, and he absolutely helped to turn the team around. He turned the entire season around. He turned the entire history of the club around at the beginning of the 2000s. So I'm going to go with Chris Sutton on this one, Scott.
Yeah, Martin O'Neill did say it. You know, he was the signing that changed everything, and I think he has been the gateway signing that's changed, you know, the success that we've got today. You know, he was the guy that started it all. Kaiser, are you giving Big Sutton the jersey, or are you keeping Brian McClare?
I'm very sorry to Chalky, but for me it's Sutton all the way. I remember the goal against Juventus as well in that game when they dove over there and stripped points away for us. That's a grudge match, you know what I mean? Sutton just had it all round, football intelligence, absolute footballing brain. You see it right now on display as a pundit. He's just sharp as a tack, man. I wouldn't like to get involved in a war of words with Chris Sutton because he would tear the pants off you, make you look stupid. Very intelligent man, very intelligent footballer, modern day, all-round pro. Had it all in his locker. I believe Henrik Larsson, you see the clubs he went to after he left Celtic, and he was asked who's the best player you ever played with, and even he still says Chris Sutton. Amazing foil man for Larsson as well. One of the most iconic duos that I remember, like growing up, it was players like York and Cole were always cited, and I would always cite Sutton and Larsson as being even better. So for me, I've got to go with Big Chris. I think he was fantastic.
Okay. Andy, you're not going to get refused entry now, mate, because the lads have made a decision for you. So is it Brian McClare for you or Chris Sutton? And be honest, not just because you want to get in next Friday.
I will get in next Friday. It's just
got a ticket.
I will get in, definitely get in. Whether he'll speak to me or no is another matter. I totally get the whole Sutton chat. Absolutely, the guy was a fantastic player for us. Great partnership with Henrik Larsson as well. Let's not forget, before he came to Celtic, all right, via Chelsea, but when he was at Blackburn, had an absolutely fantastic partnership with Alan Shearer. You know, the two of them. So You know, there's his pedigree right away. But he certainly did come up the road, had a terrible time at Chelsea, reinvigorated his career at Celtic. You know, I think that's why he's got so much love for the club, because he was successful and he actually made a difference in his career. Coming to us, because he changed us as well. We certainly get the benefit of having Chris Sutton in our team. And if a man like Henrik Larsson's praising him, you know, saying he's the best player he's played with, then I'm going to go with the king. Love Brian McClare, but Big Sutton for me. Such an iconic, very, very witty, iconic player. Very intelligent. And if you believe Simon Ferry could be a wee bit wicked as well with the young ones, you know, but sometimes you need that. You know, it's maybe missing nowadays, that kind of grounding. People are getting above their station. So I think you need players like that to help the youngsters not get too carried away and bring them back down to earth a wee bit. But he certainly had the talent, he had the goals, and he could play anywhere in the park. And I remember, you know, he could play at the back, in the middle, up front. So a cracking asset to any team. I think we were lucky to have Chris Sutton, to be quite honest with you. And not just that, it continues to support the club as well, as he has Chris Boyd on toast. Most times they're on the screen. Yep. So it's Sutton for me.
Bang on, it's a clean sweep. Chris Sutton has the jersey. He has 3 strikers, Patrick, to try and keep this jersey off now. And first one is a very different striker as well, but another goal machine for Celtic. Chris Sutton is up against...
Wow.
Dear. Gary Hooper.
Oh, what can you say about Gary Hooper, guys? You know, just a fantastic out-and-out goal scorer. Brilliant finisher. You know, I said before that probably the most natural finisher I saw playing for Celtic was George Cadet. This guy was up there as a natural finisher. You know, came from the lower leagues. But when you saw his goal scoring record, which is the first thing I checked when we saw we were interested in him, you know, the guy scored goals for fun. It's a tough one when you think of some of the goals that the guy scored. I'm going to stick with Chris Sutton on this one, just purely and simply for the fact that he was such a really good servant. As I say, Gary Hooper made the mistake that Kyogo has made and other guys have made as well. They went chasing the international football. They went chasing the bigger money in England and just basically made an arse of his career. I think Norwich City was probably about the height of what got for him. So based on that, for me, for being the longevity of Chris Sutton and the servant that he was and the influence on the Celtic team that he was, I'm going to stick with Chris Sutton on this one. Okay.
So, Kaiser, Chris Sutton has the jersey still. You're going to give Andy a decision to make, mate?
Like Gary Hooper, one of the most naturally gifted strikers I've ever seen. Put the ball in the net, a snatch turn, and the ball's in the back of the net. Absolutely fantastic. But I just can't get away from him being prided down south on promises of an English national call-up. He let people get in about his head, talk shite to him and drag him away for the club that was bringing him all the renown, the place where he should have stayed. And the grass is not always greener on the other side. So I think he found that out. And for that reason and that reason alone, as well, not alone, Sutton's footballing ability, I think he's a better all-round footballer as well. But absolutely, we're crying out for a Gary Hooper right now, someone who can just finish that ball from anywhere. But for that reason, I'm going to stick with Chris Sutton.
Okay, mate. So Chris Sutton keeps the jersey. Andy, are you making a case for Gary Hooper?
Sutton's getting the jersey, mate. Obviously, Gary Hooper, I spoke about him many times when he's come up in the chat and on any kind of pods and stuff like that. Definitely a very natural, gifted goal scorer. Was in great form when he was at Celtic, but again, very disappointed that he left Celtic when he did. Head was turned, thought he was better off down the road, and it certainly ruined his career. And I think that's obviously, I think it's played on his mind that he made a mistake there. He could have went on to absolute greatness at Celtic because he certainly had the ability and the eye for a goal, that's for sure. But Sutton for me, Sutton didn't want to leave Celtic, you know. Sutton was eventually pushed out the door, but So there's a difference with attitudes there, you know. At the end up, Gary Hooper couldn't wait to get away from Celtic. I like the idea he did 88 and the fact he had a cracking name as well. But we just seen recently in the Masters, you know, he's still got it, he's carrying a bit of weight, but still, you know, he's got that ability. So, no, unfortunately for him, Sutton's a better player overall for me.
Okay, mate. So Chris Sutton keeps the jersey yet again. He's got two strikers to try and keep that jersey off now. And Patrick, the first one is up against is the man from Japan.
Oh dear.
Oh dear,
This is not
indeed.
easy. Not easy. Definitely not easy. I loved the wee man. From the day that he walked in, you know, he played the game with a smile on his face. He was such an effervescent figure. Ange's first season, you know, without a shadow of a doubt, the key man and the whole thing. Without Kyogo's goals, it might have been very, very different for us. He was such an influence. Very, very tough one. Hans Skelper, supreme. Definitely had the measure of them. That, you know, he was in their head even before we played them. Wee man just couldn't stop scoring against them. Scored big goals for us home and away. Scoring European football. Always remember the goal he scored in the European game at Celtic Park from the pass from Jota from inside his own half. What a pass and what a finish. But again, I think he sullied his reputation with us, and you know, he went again. He just said that about Gary Hooper. He went chasing the Japanese dream, which I get that 100%. That's what he wanted to. He wanted to tell his kids and his grandchildren that he played for Japan at a World Cup. And I suppose you can't really blame him for that. But I'm going to stick with Chris Sutton on this one, just because of his overall contribution. Kyogo definitely scored some wonderful goals, but again, he was just a goal scorer. That's all he was. He was an out and out goal scorer and scored some wonderful goals. But Chris Sutton was much more than a goal scorer. He was such an influence on that team. You know, Chris Sutton was one of the guys who, you know, if things weren't going well, he would have been one of the guys who'd have grabbed us by the bootlaces and picked us up and got other players around him going. He got Neil Lennon going. He got Larson going. He got Alan Thompson going. You know, he was one of these players for driving other players on. He had such an influence. He was such a big imposing character, not only physically, but he was a big imposing character in that dressing room. In a dressing room of giants, let me add as well. Takes some doing to be a big man in that dressing room of Martin O'Neill's. So for me, I'm going to go with Chris Sutton.
Okay, mate. Kaiser?
Yeah, spot on. I can't very well turn round after saying what I said about Gary Hooper having his head turned for national football and then roll with Kyogo. Absolutely fantastic movement. Kyogo, world-class movement, world-class ability. Needed 3 chances to score a goal. I always said that. We want a striker who needs half a chance to score a goal, not 3 chances. Always remember Kyogo's goal in the cup final as well, coming on and absolute Hunskelper, as Paddy says. The definition of Hunskelper. See myself involved in conversations where we were talking as Kyogo the best since Larson. And at that time, before Kyogo left, I was all for it. I was like, yep, he's fantastic. Okay, he did have that origami shoulder that seemed to crumble as soon as he fell down. But for me, it's Chris Sutton still, all-round play, his ability to drag other people into the game. And as Paddy says, just to grab the game by the balls in the scruff of the neck and grab other players and tell them, like, get in about it, come on. He's never said die, always in about it, and an absolute Celtic man as well. As Andy said as well, eventually forced out of Celtic, kicking and screaming every step of the way. Kyogo rushed himself out the door, all the way to France, and sat in the bench eating croissants and has went absolutely nowhere since then. I think if he gets his move to the Championship, he will find himself in a world of hurt, absolutely physically demanding league of high quality. You can see that origami shoulder getting folded in new directions. So for me, Chris Sutton all the way.
Okay, Andy, the big man keeps the jersey from the wee man. Are you giving Kyogo the jersey or are you sticking with Big Chris?
Big Chris Sutton keeps the jersey for me. Kyogo, fantastic goal scorer. An absolute predator when it comes to scoring goals. But again, you know, the way he left the club, the way he forced his hand to get out the club, when he was absolutely adored with the fans. It was only a good thing at Celtic, you know. And then he's left the club at a time when we really needed him, you know, because ultimately we still haven't replaced him. You know, we're getting in the games against Aston Villa in the Champions League. I've said it many times before, that could have turned out totally different. I know Ida had a good game that night, but, you know, we did have chances, and the wee man always popped up in big games for us. It's not really as hard a decision as what I thought it would be. It could have been an absolute legend at Celtic, and legitimate kind of calls for him the best since Larsson. I totally get that, because his first 2 seasons it was superb. Once Rodgers comes in, he looks a bit different, doesn't he? He doesn't quite get it. He looks as if he was he just didn't understand what his role was. So maybe that affected his game, the change in play. I don't know, but certainly his attitude started to change as well. You could see that in his play. I think they're totally two totally different players when it comes to stature, play, what they bring to the game and stuff like that. And I know there's a big time difference between the type of football you're playing when each of them played, but for me, Sutton keeps the jersey here.
Okay, mate. So Sutton keeps the jersey. Square Sausage Mix asking, why no Nicholas? There's no Dembele. There's no Pierre Van Hooijdonk. If you want to do this job, mate, please take it off me and come in and pick these players.
Kenny Douglas.
Very difficult to pick 10 players.
Conor Copey, a fantastic striking talent at the club.
Right.
Thank you for keeping that interesting, Scotty.
So Chris Sutton keeps the jersey. He has got one more striker, Patrick, to try and keep that jersey off. And I think we all know who it is. Oh, wrong button, sorry. Wrong button.
And they just punched the camera there.
It is obviously the king of kings, Henrik Larsson, mate. I'm sure, like I said, it's very difficult to pick 10 strikers and to whittle it down, but it's obviously going to be Henrik. But yeah, Paddy, just give us your thoughts on the main man.
Oh, do you know what, Scott? He's probably the one. He's probably the one player in probably every position that he would probably, if he had started off, he would probably still have been there. Would have had the jersey from position 1. You know, we were just blessed. We were blessed to see him, blessed to have him as a Celtic player. You know, when you think 650,000, just to put that in context, we paid 9 million for Adam Ida, and we paid 650,000 for Henrik Larsson. Sometimes football doesn't make sense. But, you know, just an absolute world-class player that we were very, very fortunate to have, and a player who turned out to be so loyal to Celtic. Could have gone for big money earlier, but decided to stay. You know, again, a player that came from relative obscurity in Holland. He maybe didn't know an awful lot about Celtic or Glasgow, but he just became a Celtic man. And he loved the club. You know, when I think back to the big games, the big goals, you know, the goals against Rangers, you know, the guy was absolutely just, he was in their heads, you know, from weeks before we played them. And he just couldn't stop scoring against them. Talisman for us in those fixtures. Just a player of wonderful ability. You know, also coming back from 2 very, very serious injuries, you know, a broken jaw and then a broken leg, you know, and not only a broken leg, but the kind of broken leg injury that he got, you know, just many other players would have just called it quits at that, you know, but arguably coming back and maybe even got better when he came back. Just absolutely fantastic player. It was a privilege to say that I witnessed Henrik Larsson in a Celtic shirt. I was there the day that he bade farewell to Celtic Park against Dundee United, signed off with 2 goals, typical Larsson goals, and to see the tears run down his face when he left was just. I remember us all coming home in the boat that evening thinking, there's no way that Celtic are going to let this happen. They're going to do something. They'll pull a rabbit out of the hat this summer, but it wasn't to be. But, again, the mark of the man, it just shows you the quality and the caliber of him. Many other players would have just been happy to go and put their feet up and put the slippers on and coast to the end of his career, but not a bit of it. He goes down to Manchester United and helps Alex Ferguson's team win a title down there. He goes on then to plays for Barcelona and turns a Champions League final against Arsenal absolutely on its head in the last 10 minutes of the game. When you talk to Swedish fans about Larsson, he's just an absolute icon of the Swedish international setup. The famous dreadlocks when he first hit the scenes as well. But as I say, just the biggest compliment I can pay him is that I don't care where you would have started. I don't care if you had to put 100 strikers up there and started Larsson as number one. He would have made his way through to the end. Absolutely world class striker, and we were very fortunate, and very privileged to have him. And it's a very easy one, Scott.
Yeah, of course. And look, it's very difficult to pick 10 strikers, like I said, but obviously not for some people in the chat who, just blows my mind, man. Kaiser, Larsson, obviously always going to get the jersey for the Four Leaf Clover podcast. Just give us your thoughts on the King of Kings.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Paddy hit the nail on the head over and over again. Everything I was going to mention, Paddy's in there and mentioned it. I've never been in paradise and watching Henrik. Ball gets played out to him on the left-hand side and he backheeled the ball, and I turned to my pal and says, I'm sitting in the stand and I didn't even see the player who Henrik passed the ball to. I didn't even see the run. I didn't track it. And I'm sitting on the top tier perspective view down on the pitch. Absolute world-class player. Big Wim Jansen as well, right? Bringing Henrik in. Spitting image of my pal's mum, Kathy Hines. Same haircut and everything. We used to pound off for it. We used to call her Big Wim. Big Kathy on a whim. But Henrik Larsson, when he left as well, as Paddy says, seen the interviews after the Champions League final, Thierry Henry, another truly iconic world-class player. And he says, the interviewer asked him, what happened there? Why did you, what went wrong? And he Henrik Larsson, he just says, put it in a nutshell, Henrik Larsson came on and that's what went wrong. Henrik Larsson, fantastic player. Absolutely fantastic. I still remember his diving header he scored for Sweden as well. Such a graceful figure, absolute Hun scalper. The way he lobbed Kloss as well, just so iconic, absolutely iconic. And that, look that in chat as well. Ronaldinho saying Henrik Larsson was his idol. Ronaldinho, the footballer with a smile, the smiling assassin. Henrik Larsson for me, all the way. As I says earlier on, Scotty, we all know the final destination here. It was just a course of how we get there. And I'm glad, mate, you made it adventurous and funny with the players we're going through. You did a fantastic job, mate. You can't please everybody. Just like Big Sutton on his commentary, you can be a polarising figure. We're not here to make friends with everybody. We're here to provide a bit of entertainment for everyone. Get your opinions in, get involved, legends. They're not always going to be the same as mine, but they're 100% valid. That's the spice of the podcast world. It's all about opinions. Opinions are like arseholes. Everybody's got one, and they think theirs doesn't stink, and everybody else's does. That's just the way it goes.
And we knew that he was always going to get the jersey. It's just how we get there, which was going to be the fun part. Just give us your closing thoughts, mate, on the King of Kings, and then we'll get it wrapped up, my man.
Danny McGrain is my favourite Celtic player of all time, but Henrik Larsson is the greatest player I've ever seen with my own eyes. And we are so blessed to have had him at our club for 7 years. He gave us 7 years of his career when he could have went any team in the world. And there was certainly interest there. He could have walked into any team. He was so instrumental to our success with his goals, with his play. By the way, he was superb in the air as well. For somebody that wasn't the tallest, he was very good in the air, scored a lot of headers. It was always there in the right place at the right time. And Henrik Larsson for me was always in this jersey. There's obviously no doubt about that. It's just, even when you see Henrik talking about Celtic, and Paddy just touched on, the last game against Dundee United, we were all in tears, always. We actually, when we were watching Henrik leave Celtic Park for the last time, and then we're going, what now? you know, because our future wasn't kind of, it was in doubt then, because everything was because of Henrik. You know, he's the king of kings, and look at the success we've got known to after that. You know, so a lot of that's down to the stuff that he done when he was at the club, and you can find something in there for that as well. Martin O'Neill, and you know, an era at Celtic, obviously Wim Janssen coming in, stopping the 10. Just a fantastic time for. And by the way, he had some really kind of tough times at Celtic as well. He didn't have a great start against Hibs, you know. And then obviously Seville, and when he won the European Cup with Barcelona, I was absolutely over the moon for him, because nobody deserved it more than him. Just to see him go up and get his hands on that cup, nobody deserved it more than him. An absolute fantastic superstar, an absolute superstar. We should be privileged that he gave us so much of his career. Got him for an absolute bargain, and the good thing is he was happy here. That's why he was here so long. His family was happy. He was happy at a big club, winning things, being successful, and he's the one that said he was going to go. You know, so he was that type of character. There wasn't going to be any U-turns. There wasn't going to be any magic announcements coming out that he's good giggies in a couple of years. He was gone, and he stuck to his word, and he gave us every ounce of his energy, and all the time he was here. The leg breaks, and you know that he did run in with McKinley as well, didn't he, Tosh McKinley? But also, if you remember, when he cut his dreadlocks off, that was a disaster as well, wasn't it? He's never going to be the same player. He's never going to be the same. Why did he cut his dreadlocks off? When he breaks his leg, he's never going to be the same player again. Comes back even better. Yeah. That shows you a character in a man. So, 100%, absolute superstar.
So Henrik Larsson, just as my neighbour starts drilling, perfect timing. Henrik Larsson gets the number 9 jersey, folks, for the Four Leaf Clover podcast. There's the type of company that he's in. And somebody was asking earlier, is there going to be one striker? We're playing a 4-2-3-1 formation, like Celtic play just now. So next up on Friday's show is going to be the number 10 jersey. So who is going to be sitting just behind Henrik? We will let you know on Friday. Andy will get that updated for us. We'll get Henrik up top. So we'll get the number 10, the number 11, and we're actually going to do a manager to try and manage this team as well that we've seen in our time. Yes, Patrick.
Scotty, I just want to say on behalf of Kaiser and Andy and myself, you've done a fantastic job there tonight again. I know you took a bit of stick in the comments, but you know, these are people obviously who don't realise the preparation and the research that goes in behind the scenes. Listen, we could have picked 100 players, you know, easily. We've been very fortunate to witness some brilliant Celtic strikers down through the years, but you know, you had the job of coming up with 10 players, and I thought you've done a very, very good job there. So on behalf of the rest of the guys, I just want to thank you for that.
Yeah, legend, 100%. I always say that Bob Marley was a massive Celtic fan, and when Big Bob passed away early, he reincarnated as Henrik Larsson and came back to play for the Celtic. That's why he turned up with the dreads. Sometimes when the Waynes see my Bob Marley tattoo, and they're like, "Who's that, Dad?" And I'm like, "It's Henrik Larsson." Shut up.
You mind they done the Question of Sport thing, the mystery guest, and it was Bob Marley on that. Aye,
that's right, mate. That was brilliant.
Yeah. Brilliant. So thanks for that, Paddy. That was very nice, mate. I wasn't expecting that, so thank you. We will see you on Friday night, where we'll pick our number 10 jersey. Who is going to be the man who's going to sit behind our Henrik and supply him with even more goals? We'll find it on Friday night. Thank you, Paddy. Thank you, Kaiser. Thank you, Andy. And thank you to the majority of you, I shall say, in the chat this evening.
Love you all.
I'll be as diplomatic as ever. We'll see you on Friday night. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed that. All the best. And hail, hail.
Hail, hail, legends. Hail, hail.
Someday you will find me.